about your first birth.
Finn, he was my first, so he's almost 6 years old. And I had a beautiful pregnancy with him. The usual, fatigue, sore feet, baby brain, all that sort of stuff. And I was really, really excited about the birth. I was working at a birthing centre at the time, providing continuity care with women, and I was just amazed by what I saw and witnessed in that time with those women. So it sort of gave me the strength and encouragement to go through with my own birth. Hopefully I wanted a water birth. That was the plan. Yeah, but also a lot of anxiety as well.
From what you've seen over the years.
Yeah, a lot. And I think looking back, I put so much pressure on myself to get that birth that I wanted, and I didn't want any intervention, and I was pretty fearful of it all, medical intervention. Especially, you see the rates of intervention are pretty sky high. But luckily, I had a beautiful birth. I woke up one day before my son's due date, and it was around 3 a.m. with a few niggles and tightenings. And I was just so excited. I was like, it's happening. But then I was like, settle down, Sarah. It might be a long journey, so let's just try and rest. So I tried to rest and lie down, but I was pretty damn excited. But I do remember I had like a show, and then the tightening sort of intensified over the next few hours. So my husband set up the lounge area. We had a beautiful space, my music, my candles, my affirmations around me, the fit ball. It was all dark, which is what I wanted. So it was just a beautiful space to be in. And it really set me off at a good start. So I just remained upright, but listened to my body when it needed a rest. And I remember ringing my midwife, and she was on a day off. Typical. And she was like, oh, you'll be ages, you're sounding, they're pretty like far apart, pretty sporadic. And I was like, okay. And then I rang her back probably about 2 hours later, and I was like, I can't breathe through them, they're pretty intense. And she was like, oh, go have a shower, you'll be right. And I was like, okay. So I hopped in the shower, and I was just like, oh my gosh, it was pretty intense at that point. Coming hard and fast, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get going. This is pretty insane. So then I remember the car ride being like the worst part of my labour, like just sitting there. I had a TENS machine, which I loved.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, that was a great distraction for me. But I remember it was like the middle of the day, and I had my glasses on, and I was just like, just drive and get there.
So what time was it by the time you left the house?
Oh, gosh, I can't remember. Probably like 11:30 or something like that at this stage.
And it's a half an hour roughly, or was it longer?
It was like 20 minutes.
Okay.
20 minutes, not even. But it felt like a lifetime.
Yeah, especially so you've obviously tried to push it, or you and your midwife tried to push you as as far as possible to stay at home for as long as possible, so those surges keep going and you don't want to get in too early in case they stop. That's and all of that stuff. So then you're at like your most intense point when you get in that car. No wonder that felt like forever.
Yeah. So we get there, and it was like the middle of the day, and my colleagues were like, oh, Sarah, what are you doing here? And then I was like, ooh, and they're like, oh, it's happening. And I was like, just feel the bath and get me in there. And so by the time I got there, and my midwife came in on her day off, bless her, I was about 8 centimetres, but he was a little bit high up, so I think she was a little bit worried about that. But I was doing lots of upright positioning and using the TENS machine, and then as soon as the bath was filled, I jumped in, and that was just amazing. Instant relief. And so the room was all dark, and I had my music, my husband was there, my midwife. It was all pretty amazing and special. And it was pretty shortly after I was in the bath where my body was pushing involuntarily, and I was like, oh gosh, I need to try and stop this because I don't want to be pushing if I've got cervix there. And then it didn't feel like that long, probably, but I think it was about an hour or two in the whole time. But and she said, oh, I think we can see your baby's head. And I was like, holy shit, thank God. And then my waters broke at that point. That was intense. That was probably the most intense part, but exciting. And then I could hear her opening up the birth kit. You know, I knew what was going on in the background, but my eyes were closed the entire labour. Even at home, I just wanted to be really focused inside and just not distracted by anything going on. But yeah, I remember hearing that specifically and being like, oh, okay.
It's happening.
It's happening. She's like, okay, you can push now. And I was like, oh, great.
So were you more, you said you didn't want to push if the cervix was there. So were you able to check yourself, or were you getting them to
No,
check?
I didn't even need them to check because there were so many outer signs that I was fully dilated.
So you were sort of more worried in your mind that
Yes.
maybe it's there instead of trusting your body, and
Yes.
when it's saying push, you can't stop it.
Well, because I'm a midwife, I know, like, even, you know, in posterior labours, you know, you can get that early urge to push if baby's posterior. So you have to make sure, you know, you don't have cervix. Anyway, that's just my midwife brain that I needed to switch off in labour. And my midwife was super good at that. She was amazing. So, yeah, when I got that, like, the all clear, essentially, it was pretty quick. And it was pretty amazing. Then brought my son up onto my chest, and it was beautiful. And we didn't know we were having a boy, so that was pretty special.
Surprise. Yeah. And what position were you in the bath when you pushed?
Like, basically, like, all fours, like, leaning, like, on the pillow, and had, some nice open hips.
And so when his head was out, was there much of a break between the head and the shoulders, or did he just sort of all fly out?
No. And that's why I didn't tear. I myself. No, I can't remember. I think it was just a mere, like, maybe a minute or so, and then the rest of the body was born, and my husband got his hands in there too, which was beautiful.
And so the umbilical cord was long enough you could get him up straight onto your chest?
Straight up on my chest.
And how long did you stay in the bath for then?
Only a few minutes, because I started to bleed a little bit. They were, like, a little bit worried that it might be a bit excessive, so they got me out, and then we laid down on the mat and just skin to skin with him and birthed the placenta, and and then they checked me out, and I didn't tear or anything. It was pretty amazing, pretty textbook, pretty insanely amazing.
I do remember you being very, very happy afterwards with how it all sort of went the way that you had hoped and envisioned, and that's beautiful. And like you said, not every birth goes that way, and you know that the most. How did he feed? Did he latch on straight away? Or?
Yeah. So we did, obviously that uninterrupted skin to skin for a few hours, and within the first hour we tried to, we got him onto the breast. I think the first feed was pretty okay, a bit shallow, so it hurt a little bit, I remember that, and being a midwife, I looked into his mouth and I was like, oh shit, he's got a tongue tie.
Oh, you could tell straight away.
So I tried not to worry about it because, you know, some babies do feed absolutely fine with tongue ties. Okay. It's very much an individual sort of basis, whether they need treatment or not. So, and then I was a bit hesitant the second feed. I remember, like, just feeling a little bit anxious about it. But we did some hand expressing and all of that as well to make sure that, you know, we're stimulating my supply enough.
Did that tongue tie end up causing some troubles, or?
Yes.
Okay, so what happened there?
Oh, God. So it was around day 5. I had my midwife appointment, and when I saw her, I showed her my breast, and it had some redness on it. And I was like, oh, this is a bit weird. And she's like, oh, God damn, Sarah, you've got mastitis. And I was like, nah. It'll be right. She's like, no, that's mastitis. And I was like, nah.
Denial.
No. Anyway, so, and then by the time we weighed him, he hadn't quite gained enough weight either. So that's an indication. Yeah, obviously he wasn't getting what he needed, and then my breasts were becoming, you know, insufficiently drained and blocked, and then mastitis occurred. So then I had to then go through this huge process of triple feeding, which is breastfeeding, expressing, and finger feeding.
Yes, I've been there. It's so much fun. Yeah. It's tough. That is the toughest. Mm-hmm. And lack of sleep and cleaning all those tubes
all
and
the parts.
Oh my gosh. And so when you said the redness, just for the listeners, it was redness on the breast tissue, not around the nipple?
Yeah, on the breast tissue. It was, just on the inner aspect, but it can occur in any area of the breast. It's quite mild, but I didn't at that point have any other symptoms. But then the next day, I remember I was feeling quite run down and a bit crap.
Yeah. Kind of like a fevery flu.
Yeah. So symptoms can vary according to, the extent of the mastitis. So some are quite mild and can remain at home with just a good plan in place, oral antibiotics and things like that. Others will be admitted to hospital on IV antibiotics. That was me with my second, and can be very unwell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the tongue tie meant that he wasn't draining it completely, and so they were getting blocked areas.
So he was having a really difficult time to maintain a really nice deep latch, which you need, and causing nipple compression and damage there. So any damage to the nipple is obviously like a portal of entry for bacteria to get into the breast tissue. Okay, so that's where the risk is, and that's where I got infective mastitis from. So when he was about 1 week of age, we took him to an amazing doctor in Perth, and she performs frenotomies.
Is that the cutting?
The cut,
okay.
When they cut the frenulum.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was pretty awful to watch. It was very quick, and she is incredibly amazing. So we had complete trust in her. But yeah, he screamed, and then as soon as it was done, put him straight onto the breast. Yeah.
It's amazing how the breast can just fix things.
Oh,
so good.
if in doubt, whip it out.
That is so good. I love that saying. And so how old was he when you did the cut?
A week.
A week old. Oh gosh, of course. And your first little one, and you just don't want any pain to come to them. Of course you would have been feeling a bit nervous about that.
Yeah.
And so how did you come to that decision that was what you needed to do?
So yeah, luckily I have access to some amazing lactation consultants where I birthed, and they helped identify that, it was pretty significant and warranted to be treated. And then they also gave me a plan in place to make sure that, we were adequately draining my breasts and giving him the right amount and things like that, and balancing a plan that was sustainable, because like we said, triple feeding is just pure exhaustion.
Yeah. I think we did it for nearly 3 months and I was exhausted.
3 months.
Yeah, it was a long time of doing it. Eventually we got there after having a phone call with you and speaking with another friend of mine. And we eventually got there. But yeah, that's a long journey. Oh my God. And so how was the recovery for Finn?
The recovery itself was okay, but when I look back, it was such it was really difficult for me to adjust, because I was unaware at the time of how anxious I was.
Okay.
And because I was a neonatal nurse prior to becoming a midwife, so I'd worked with so many babies over the years. And I remember one night, when I brought him home, looking at him next to me, and I was like, I don't feel comfortable with this. Like, no one's watching you while you sleep, and I didn't know how for me to switch off.
Okay. So you've been used to first working with the tiniest of tiny babies that have been born early, but also then coming from a place where they've always been monitored, and you've been the one always monitoring. But as mum, you can't do that.
No, even though as a midwife, I've visited hundreds of mothers, and babies at home. But when it came to myself, it was like, oh my God. And then the anxiety kicked in, like, what if this blanket goes over his face? What if this happens? What if this happens? So it was pretty instant. Yeah, so I did find it really hard at first to adjust to sleeping with him. And then the lack of sleep kicked in with him, because he wasn't a sleeper. Yeah. Still isn't. Bless him. But that's who he is, and he was that way from the beginning. Yeah. He, he woke up every hour and a half until he was 18 months. Yeah.
It's hard, and then because you're not sleeping, the anxiety gets worse, and even depression during the day can get worse, or panic, and so were you aware at the time that you were anxious?
No.
Did that take a while?
It took a long time. I think I do remember seeing someone around, probably when he was about 10 months or so. She was nice, but she sort of indicated that I need to go on medication, and instantly I just put a wall up to her, and I was like, nah, see ya. I'm more of a holistic sort of person when it comes to things like that. So in hindsight, I probably should have kept seeing her, but you don't know what you don't know. And I had a beautiful experience. It was just a lot harder than I ever anticipated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, becoming a mummy is a lot harder than anybody anticipates. But I wonder, was there an aspect of you coming at it because you are a health professional and always having worked in that area, did you set an unrealistic expectation on yourself?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even with my birth, you know, I was so adamant to get the birth that I wanted. Yeah, I was a bit insane in my pregnancy. I remember looking back, I remember going to like pregnancy Pilates, pregnancy aqua aerobics, doing my walking, you know, doing my antenatal expressing from 37 weeks, doing this, doing that, like hill climbs and stuff when I was 38 weeks. Like, I was pretty gung-ho. Like, I will get this birth that I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice thing though, because also being the first birth, you're so excited and you want to fully dive into it. So there's that element as well. But yeah, when it becomes a pressure that you've put on yourself, that can sometimes obviously not be helpful. And I think it's quite relatively common for somebody to reach out for help and that be the first response. Okay, well, you need to go on medication. And that is it's such a bad place to start with a new person. It's building rapport, talking about other options, because that happens. You put a wall up and then you don't get the help that you probably needed.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other ways that help can look. It's not always just medication. So what led you to becoming a lactation consultant? I suppose it's this.
It was this. So after I had Finn, I was just blown away with how much I didn't know about breastfeeding. I was just like, and I utilised the lactation consultants at the hospital. I think I saw them about 8 times within the first 12 months for support. And they were just amazing. The help that they provided with me will stay with me forever. I'm forever grateful to those women. And I thought to myself at that time, I was like, I want to be able to do this for women. And then it was literally a few months later I started studying for my lactation consultancy. And then,
beautiful.
Yeah, so then I did it 6 months later.
It's an intensive course too. But yes, lifesavers, I think, when they come to your rescue like that, because it's, for some women, breastfeeding is so easy and so like it just happens. And then for others, it's such a challenge, and it's your source of food and your everything, not just food, but it's your everything to that baby. And that's why, from a mum's point of view, it's so like, if I can't do this, what do I do? And we need lots of support and coaching and constant support and coaching, I think, to get that.
A lot. We need so much more support in the community than we have. Women out there are quite desperate for that.